All right. Welcome, everyone, to this edition of CorpDev.Ninja. I think it's been a pretty crazy week for everyone, given the elections. Yep, I've got you on. I see you, Brian.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Doing great.
What a crazy week. And we're going to get into your background and you know, I've got some really juicy questions to ask, and you've got some great insights that we'll share on the show. But what a week! Just before we
I know. I was saying earlier, I've watched more MSNBC in the last 72 hours than I've watched in the last 7 years. So it's been a thing.
Yeah, I've watched for sure. I've been pretty glued this past week, and I think I've been like scrolling between CNBC, CNN. I've even been watching Fox as well, which I've never done ever. But I'm just wanting to see what everyone is saying across all sides.
Oh yeah, well, I say Kornacki's my new hero. Like, the guy is amazing.
Yeah. So. When do you think they're going to call it? When do you think we're going to have the final say, final judgment?
Oh, it's what in 2000 it was December 4th or 5th, if I'm not mistaken. So, I'd probably put the over/under in after Thanksgiving. I mean, the networks will call it soon, I think.
Yeah.
Probably today or tomorrow, but maybe early next week. But, this isn't going to get sorted quickly.
Yeah, it is. It's not going to get sorted quickly. So thanks for joining, everyone. This is episode 17.
18.
Brian Goldfarb joining us from, I thought originally San Francisco, but then I realized no, he lives in Seattle. So we changed that last minute in the title card. How's Seattle?
Seattle's great. Rainy, cold winter. It's not San Francisco, so I feel like we've upgraded over here.
It's definitely an upgrade. No, I used to live in. That's how we know each other. Yep. We both moved to Seattle around the same time, but you were a year ahead of me. We both started off at Microsoft together with our original crew of quote unquote marketing leadership recruits from undergrad. That was a long time ago now. It feels like yesterday though.
Yeah, I had more hair. I was younger.
The hair still looks great. You still, you still look as young.
Yeah, thank you.
This is great. How are you holding up just in general in COVID? Are you pretty much quarantining? I did a trip last week for the first time in 8 months in a plane. It's the least amount of travel I've ever done, including since being an infant. So I've never traveled the least amount of time as I have today. Are you traveling anywhere? Have you gone anywhere?
We've been very quarantined. We have not really left town. We drove on a little trip, which was a nice change of scenery. Have not been on a plane since RSA in February, which was the last kind of trip I did. So yeah, I'm in the same boat. It's the least travel I've done in ever, frankly.
Yeah, and then before this one, it's actually quite nice. I tell everyone, including my parents, I'm like, I've literally worked 3 years in 1 year. I've gotten so much stuff done, including this show and other things. It's it just goes to show that travel can be, and sometimes I would subconsciously travel to places because I thought I had to, but it was more or less me, less being about efficient, more about hey, I just want to change things up and travel. So crazy. So
we certainly all learned that we can get a lot of what we need to get done without actually getting on a plane. I think that's been a big aha moment for so many people in the last 7 months or so.
Yeah. And a lot of, remote work's going to change. I've been doing it for 8 years, and now I'm happy the world is on my schedule. So Brian, I'm going to give you a quick bio for the folks who are listening live and who will listen later. Brian Goldfarb was most recently the Chief Marketing Officer and SVP of Business Development at Chef Software, which was sold to Progress Software last month. So hot off the heels of an M&A, and we're going to get into that shortly. Prior to joining Chef, Brian was the Chief Marketing Officer at Splunk from 2016 to 2019, leading that business through a major digital marketing transformation. Brian also served as SVP of Platform and App Cloud Marketing at Salesforce from 2015 2016. From 2012 to 2015, he also served as head of marketing of cloud platform at Google, launching Google's multi-billion-dollar cloud service provider to compete with Amazon and Microsoft. Really, like, I definitely want to learn more about that because that's impressive. Previously, Brian served in product marketing and product management roles at Microsoft from 2003 to 2012 across developer tools and platforms, IT infrastructure systems, digital media, and cloud computing. Brian holds an AB from Duke University in comp sci and economics. Man, what an impressive background.
Mouthful, man.
You've done a lot. I mean, like, now that I think about it, it feels like yesterday since we were all joined Microsoft. When I read that bio, I'm like, wow, you've had a lot of career changes and different tracks between Microsoft and Google. You've done the startup thing, and really impressive.
I have a lot of a varied set of experiences at large companies, at smaller companies, at growing companies, at turnaround sorts of things, and it's been it's an incredible learning experience. And I think the whole M&A conversation will be fascinating, having now been on both sides of the table by design, and it's been a pretty amazing experience.
I think that's the future, though. Like, people who have I find the best business leaders and people, I mean, if you want to take an executive or leadership position at a company or even start your own company, I can't like express enough to folks, especially younger folks, that it's great to start off at a larger company so you can refine those skills and, building that professional gravitas and like learning process and analysis and just refining yourself, and then going to a smaller experience and then either continuing that path or jumping back in. But having that wide variety of experiences can only strengthen you as a business leader, either in your own business, your own startup, or if you want to be at a large corporate, rising to the ranks, if that's what you want to go do. So
I joke I've been chasing smaller and smaller companies, right? We started with over 100,000 at Microsoft, and so anything smaller was being smaller. But I think the interesting thing about leadership, when you're at one company for a long time, particularly a large company, which is an amazing place to learn. Like, there's nothing, you can't get a better MBA, better set of core business experiences than you get working for an established, mature organization. Like, they just have so much capability that you can learn from. But if you're there for too long, I think one of the muscles you don't get to exercise is the ability to learn how to do it someplace else. Different culture, different processes, different personalities, different ways of being successful. And so that muscle can sometimes not get exercised enough. And so that roundedness that you discuss in leadership is really being able to have varied experiences and figure out how to do your thing regardless of where it is.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that's definitely some major wisdom that I think, as I've mentored folks, that like, yeah, you just got to go just try a bunch of stuff, see what sticks, because by the time you're in your mid 30s or in your 40s, you should already be like well on your way of knowing what you're good at. And sometimes it takes longer. So I'm really interested, hot off the heels of an M&A, tell me about the process and what was your role to see this through successfully. So congratulations on the M&A.
Thank you. Yes, it was the transaction closed last month, which was great, to a public company. Interesting journey. We started kind of the very beginnings of the process before COVID, and we're going through traditional sell side M&A process, right? My role coming from the marketing and BD side was mainly in how do you package the story for for a potential investor or potential buyer, and how do you get that get the CEO prepared to have that conversation. That was my principal role, and later, obviously, during diligence, very hands-on in all the different components. But yeah, I think from my background and my experience, the storytelling component becomes the most important. And so we started it like you would any other corp dev conversation. We took it on the road. We've been a bunch of people. There's a lot of travel involved for.
What was the impetus to do this M&A? Was there inbound interest? Was there a desire to transact?
We're looking for a capital raise and or M&A, mainly just to execute against a thesis of DevOps market consolidation, which It's an absolutely true thesis. We were trying to figure out our role in that. We started the conversations of like, how do you access more capital, which ultimately led into a sell side event, right? The company was trying to find, the cash to go execute against that thesis. But we hit the COVID wall, and COVID is interesting.
I was going to say, how did you, because you're one of the very few companies I have heard of to go through a transaction during COVID time. So really interesting to understand how did that affect the process?
Well, I mean, capital markets ceased to operate in April, right? I think we all kind of saw very varied versions of that. Public equity markets crashed. Businesses were super confused about what it meant for forecasts. Like no one was doing anything. So our process stopped.
Yeah, I stopped capital raising or not capital raising, but making investments for my VC fund from like end of March for like 2-3 months, like completely. I was just like, because
most people would pump the brakes. Like even if you weren't worried or you had a bullish outlook, there was just no transactions. There was nothing, right? Everyone was afraid and confused, and rightly so. I think it was peak confusion, hysteria, lack of understanding. So it was the correct thing for the market to do, right? Was to just stop.
Right.
We saw that across everything. We saw that in the business and what was looking, from a pipeline perspective. We saw that from customers who were all trying to figure out their own, how do they shore up liquidity? How do they reduce costs? Things like that. And then on the M&A side, everyone was like, yeah, cool. We're going to, see what happens. And so April, May, and June were quiet. And that was fine. We were just running the business like everybody else, trying to figure out what COVID meant. And I think as we got to June, and many companies, I think in technology have seen this, the COVID tailwind became a little bit more apparent. Like there was all this fear of what it was going to mean. And actually it created a bunch of secular impact, right? Like certain businesses, obviously travel, entertainment, those types of things have taken a very large hit, disproportionate hit relative to, say, Zoom or other technology companies that were
totally polarizes whichever side of the equation you're on.
Yeah, the money didn't go away; it just reallocated itself.
Reallocated heavily, yeah.
And being on the IT side, automation was a beneficiary, a tailwind. So we saw capital markets come back in the June timeframe, and what was fascinating about our M&A, we did the whole thing. Basically, it was like a process 1 that ended, and then a process 2 that was all done remote.
That's remarkable to me.
Nuts.
All remote.
We never met anyone in person, not once. No one.
Oh my goodness. Was it disclosed? Does it publicly disclose the value of the M&A or?
Yeah. It was a $220 million all cash transaction.
Wow. And not a single person met. That is phenomenal. So hats off to your storytelling. Hats off to your storytelling, Brian. I got to learn.
$250 million enterprise value created without anyone meeting in person. And that's the status quo now, right? That's the way it is. But in June,
blows my mind.
Weird. I think that's the thing. You have to, it's now day 487 of March. But in day 60 of March, it was unheard of to think that you could do pretty much anything, like executive hiring, certainly M&A in a world, in a business that's so reliant on let's go to dinner, let's shake hands, let's look each other in the eye and say how we're going to do this. And it's what I think the big learning. It really made you focus on a different set of fundamentals, right? It was less about the how did you hit it off with people, and way more about like here's the story, here's the meaning, here's what we're going to go do. Let's go get it done. And it was hyper efficient, to be honest. No planes, no bankers flying back and forth. Everything was virtual, super fast. And that was a pretty incredible part of the process.
Remarkable. Well, yeah, I'm actually doing 2 M&As right now. I'm an advisor to two companies in an M&A process. And it's true. Like everything is actually, one's just starting right now. I don't suspect we're going to have to do much travel, but they will not be on the scale as $250 million. So if you can get it across the line at $250 million, then I should be able to get it across the line without meeting as well and be efficient. But it is I'm noticing changes. What's up?
Just send the bottle of champagne and you're fine.
Exactly. Awesome. That's amazing. Switching gears a little bit, focused on Splunk. What deal are you most proud of at Splunk at your time there?
Yeah, we only did a handful of M&A while I was CMO at Splunk. We were very much.
It doesn't have to be M&A. It can be anything corp dev, BD. Like,
oh, there was so much, a lot of technical BD. But I actually think we bought a company called VictorOps out of Boulder. It was an IT, kind of competed with PagerDuty and OpsGenie in that kind of on-call space. And that was just a lot. That one was more, proud of isn't necessarily the right word, but it was just a lot of fun working with that team. Small company. They had, I think the most interesting challenge we were working through is their model was more of a high transactional velocity PLG model. And Splunk was predominantly a high ASP, long sales cycle, enterprise company. And trying to figure out how to blend and understand those two types of businesses, and how do you reconstruct an MRR business in a lot of ways inside of an ACV or ARR business was, I think, the most interesting component of that transaction. But that was a lot of fun, great team, cultural blend. So that was the one I think I'm not most proud of, but certainly the one I had the most fun doing.
How long did that take you?
That was pretty quick. Quarter, maybe
3 months.
Yeah.
Wow, that's fast. Yeah, I always say M&As typically take the shortest amount of time, 3 months.
Yeah,
typically I average 6.
4 or 5 months. I don't think to be fair, I may not have been involved in the very beginning of the dialogue when I got it. So maybe there was a couple months in front of it, but it kind of recall it being pretty fast clip. Once it got going.
Awesome. How does corp dev differ at large companies like Salesforce versus startups? And we know that you also had a big role at Salesforce previously, but just curious.
How do they differ? My view, that's a great question. I think the view is, as companies mature, the corp dev function matures, and like anything at scale, you get specialization, you get focus. So Salesforce has an incredible corporate development team, whether it's ventures or the venture side of the house or the later stage, or even just M&A components that they do. And it was a big machine, right? So I think in a big company, you typically don't get your hands on all the different M&A conversations like in your stovepipe. So when we were doing some of the in the platform side, we had some early conversations about different companies that could be interesting. So my role in corp dev was mainly on the partner piece and less on the M&A side, which I think is the reality. Like either you're in corp dev or you're not in corp dev, and then you're a deal sponsor in your little universe. But that's, I think, the biggest difference. In the smaller companies, everyone plays a hand. So when we were looking at buy-side transactions, a lot of the debate was like, hey, how do we even have the capacity to manage this type of an activity? Whether it's a partnership deal, so at Chef, we had a lot of business development work with Amazon and Microsoft and Google on the cloud provider side, and you just had all these capacity constraints that made it kind of an interesting dialogue. That's kind of one piece, but everyone had a hand. I think that's the biggest difference. And then obviously, if you're a big giant company, you're generally the buy side. That's right. Not the sell side. And I'll tell you, the buy side
unless you divest, and that's rare.
Yeah, fair. That's your GE.
Yeah. GE. Awesome. So what was the big, and you also spent quite a while at Google and obviously Microsoft. What was the biggest learning lesson from Google? And this is before, I think that was a step right before you had a major role or an executive position at Salesforce, but you had a major role at Google as well. So what was the biggest learning lesson from Google?
The Google role was fun because it was a build job, right? It was the ultimate do a startup with complete safety net, all the different pieces of Google behind you. I think one of the biggest learnings though is companies have a dance, a thing that they do real well. And when you are working in a category or a space that's fairly different from their innate thing, it creates a really different kind of dynamic. And so, like, in simple terms, Microsoft was a B2B company, right? And Google was not. And so we used to have like really interesting conversations like, hey, this cloud business is going to be big. Or I remember we'd have conversations to the extent of the cloud business is probably going to be as big as the advertising business. And the advertising people would look at you and say, you're crazy. No, but like actually it's probably bigger potentially from a gross revenue perspective. And it just, that DNA and that culture can be really challenging in a lot of ways. And so you look at the evolution of that business. I mean, it was 6 million ARR in 2012. And now it's probably, what, 8 or 9 billion, if I had to guess.
Oh, my goodness. What's the multiple on that in terms of market cap? Is it like...
Who knows? None of these, they're not independent, right? Like if you spun AWS out of Amazon, what would the market cap be? 350, 400, 500 billion, maybe more.
Wow.
Like it's hard to say. Like what's the market cap of, what's the composition of Amazon's market cap that's from AWS? It could be $1 trillion of it for all we know.
It could be.
Because it is extremely high margin. It's extremely efficient business. Like that's the...
Probably, I would say 20 to 30x is, I'm sure I'm going to get a text message from somebody after this being like, from the public equities market, some of my friends who are traders like, oh, is that 20, 30x? But I would guess that.
It might be.
300 million. And you help build that.
Yeah, I mean, look, you think about the multiples that are given to high NRR businesses right now. Cloud is like a great example of extremely high NRR, right? Big deals that grow with consumption over time with basically infinite TAM.
Right.
If you look at comps in the marketplace where there's 80x multiples, like saying 20 to 30 doesn't feel crazy.
Doesn't feel crazy because I think Shopify is like at 80x.
Yeah, Snowflake's at 80x, right?
It's high 80x.
Right? High, extremely high NRR businesses, 160+%. Like they can basically take, next 12 months revenue times 30 to 40x. They're growing at 120%. Like you get to that 80 number. I mean, just kind of do this comp. Splunk is about 2 billion ARR ish. They're trading at 30 billion market cap. So that's 15x.
15x, yeah.
And Snowflake's about 250 million ish. And they're trading at 60 billion.
Yeah, huge.
So that they got a lot to grow into, but it's going to be it's something I think about a lot. And being part of the construction of that, they're at the very beginning of the journey. Just trying to figure out, not product market fit, because that was defined by Amazon. That was defined by Amazon. Google market fit. Like how do you get Google to think about the business in a way that gets investment and thought leadership? And that's taken them 8 years.
Wow. That's awesome. I love that. What's the biggest learning lesson that you got from Microsoft? And how many years were you there for?
Just short of 10.
Just short of 10. Okay, so I'm sure you've got a nice cherry in there somewhere of your biggest learning lesson at Microsoft. And I'm curious as well, selfishly, because we started around the same time. So I'm curious.
Biggest learning lesson at Microsoft. I don't know if this is the answer you expect.
And it's also your first professional job, actually. So
it's my first post-collegiate professional full-time job. Yeah, it's I'll tell you that Microsoft's a giant company. We were there in the Bomber days, not the Satya days, so a fairly different organization than it is today. And I would say the biggest learning that I keep with me today was this idea. I call it the favor bank. And it was in a giant company, to get anything done, someone has to do you a favor at the end of the day. There's very little you have your little patch, right? Even at any level of seniority, whether you're like 21 and you do this tiny little thing, or you're 31 and you run a big team,
right?
You need other people to get things done. And that's how large matrix companies work. And I learned early on that the best way is to just help as many people out as you possibly can so that you can get their support when you need it. And I don't know. I'm not
Like
sure it's
karma. Pay it forward, karma points, political.
Yeah, I call it favor bank, right? Because the world operates on favors. I do it for you, you do it for me, and that's how we get things to move forward.
I think that's a good credo just in life in general. I've never thought, like, I'm not a zero sum type of person. And I've learned that, like, the more that you can just help people genuinely and authentically, and you have time to do it and you're able to help folks, like, some folks may, that might return in the future or it may not, but you shouldn't be thinking about that.
But in the aggregate, yeah.
In the aggregate, it's going to help you out. And those people who don't know how to, like, do favors for others or help others, they're always going to be stuck at the place that they are early on in their career, whatever they want to do in life. So,
I agree with you.
Favor. I love the favor bank idea because that's something that I didn't even know how to name, but I'm a proponent and
keep it in the back is what I always used to say to myself. You always want to never be in debt. And to some extent, the key part is the authenticity of it, right? You want to do it because it's the right thing to do. And the thing we trade in is time. Like, all of us are so busy, and finding ways to make that time, particularly when you're younger in career and you have more access to minutes.
That's right.
To the extent that you can use that for good, or you can use that for yourself and others. Like, that's a super positive thing.
Yeah. Love that. Brian, what are you up to today? So, hot off the heels of an acquisition, you're no longer, have you helped with the integration, or you're
I'm done. No, I was done on the deal close, which is excellent.
Awesome. So what's your next, what are you looking for next? What's your next step?
I'm hanging out with my dog, who's like passed out in the corner.
And the name?
That's Remy.
Remy. Oh.
He's really cute. I won't bore everyone by bringing him up here. He's been a boy. He's been my COVID, or my wife and I's COVID, like, savior. Let me tell you. By
the way, I got a Bengal kitten a couple months ago for the same reason. Didn't realize, like, it's been like 15, 20 years since I've had a pet. I'm like, now I forgot how amazing and awesome it is, and like how much, like, endless love and, like, social interactions that you have. It's incredible.
He's a participant in many meetings and makes everybody happy. I'm going to pull over here in a minute. Right now, I'm actually going through this. You get this very rare to be able to have this opportunity. I'm just talking to tons and tons of companies, different CEOs in all these different spaces, and trying to figure out what the right next thing is for myself. I have a bunch of different ideas, but I've been blessed to have dozens and dozens of conversations. And we're kind of at this cool juncture in time where so many technology companies are having so much success and growth that it's a great time to be a marketer. It's a great time to be in technology. And I'm in learn mode, which the longer I can continue to be in learn mode and get to experience what's out there, I think is the better. Although my wife would tell you she'd prefer that I don't do this much longer.
I'm sure you're going to have, a unlimited optionality and opportunity lists shortly. Yeah. Are you focusing on being a CMO still, or more COO?
Actually, I've been looking at sort of like earlier stage companies. There's a couple really interesting ones that are in kind of the data space, which is my background, that are, I think, super interesting, and places where I can help, and kind of continuing down that CMO role. But I've also started thinking about, like, what does it mean to go back to being more of a specialist, or even expanding toward general management. So there's just a lot of different places to play, which is, I'm given my background, I'm lucky.
Well, after this, I actually, I had a eureka moment. There's a couple portfolios of mine. I think you'd be it would be great for you at least to know who they are, and vice versa, to see if there's a good fit there. Hey, Remy.
Come make a cameo for LinkedIn Live here. See, he is my secret weapon.
That is a corp dev move. That's how you disarm any hard-nosed negotiator.
You'd be surprised. He has been a very effective negotiator, or certainly a heart warmer for folks, as we've all been stuck behind cameras. So
yeah, super cute. So I guess we're at the tail end of our show. Couple questions. So keeping busy. You're keeping busy at home with Remy. Are you working? Do you have a Peloton like everyone else?
I am addicted to Peloton. That has been my life change. My other COVID pandemic savior. And I mean 500 miles a month addicted to Peloton.
Really?
Yeah, I love it. It's such a great product.
Oh, awesome. I've been and I'm such a gadget freak. Anyone who knows me and has been over to my place, they're like, this is like a home of the future. And they're like, everyone's surprised. They're like, why don't you have a Peloton? But I have a proper road bike that I cycled from Paris to Monaco last year.
Oh, nice.
That cost,
road bike
what's up?
Road bike prices. Yeah.
Road bike prices. Yeah. I didn't realize these things can be the cost of a cheap car. I was like, wow, but expensive. And so I'm like, I already bought this bike. I have it on this system, like a Wahoo Kicker, but I have to install it and take it off and assemble and reassemble. And I've just found I'm not using it all the time. And so folks are like, if you just get a Peloton, just have a Peloton, and you don't have to reconfigure it. It's really easy and it's fun.
Yeah.
So it's been that awesome of an experience for you. Wow.
Oh, I'm evangelist. I do no brainer.
Okay. And there's a new model out there, right?
Get the old one. It doesn't make a difference.
Get the nice one.
Doesn't matter. I mean, it's the same thing. It's the same bike at the end of the day.
Same bike.
They're a perfect example. But they nailed the network effect early. They built a huge community. And they have tons of content. They've embraced third parties in smart ways. Okay, you went out, and it's super powerful. But yeah, that's been good. Definitely a good pandemic respite, particularly in Seattle when it rains a lot.
It's when it rains a lot. Yeah. Are you watching anything on? I just started watching season 2 of Mandalorian on Disney. Ooh. I actually liked it.
Queen's Gambit we just finished, which is actually pretty wonderful.
That one's awesome.
Pretty wonderful piece on Netflix. My wife's decided to rewatch Dawson's Creek, so that's been that's my option: the election or Dawson's Creek. So I can choose.
That's what you said. And then, how are you feeding yourselves? Are you guys? I don't know. Are you? Do you like to cook? Or do you like? Either of you?
How are we feeding ourselves? Oh my gosh, we have cooked more in the pandemic than I think we ever have, but still doing the blend. We want to keep our local businesses alive, frankly. It's very important to us. So we mix it up, but I've gotten better at cooking. So I will not starve and die in the future, which is probably a good thing. I don't know. It just forces you to totally slow down. I mean, I think we're all working more because there's no.
I'm working so much more,
and there's no separation. But I also think it's gotten us all, at least in my life, to stop and appreciate some of the littler things that maybe you get lost in running through airports and all the things. So it's been really positive.
Amazing. Well, we are at the tail end. Brian Goldfarb, loved having you on the show. Congratulations on all the success. Thank you very much for the insights that you've shared with us regarding M&A, COVID. Building $100+ billion, $200, $300 billion divisions at Google, and so on and so forth. And I'll follow up with you after as well regarding a couple opportunities I think that you might wanna see as well. So thank you so much.
All right, take care. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.